So I'm unfortunately at my mom and dad's house where the lighting is harsh and bad. But I'm here because I'm going to read an excerpt from a novel I started a very long time ago. I've been working on ever since. It's called Halfway House. It's a conversation going on between a keeper, which is basically the Grim Reaper, and the dead girl that he's starting to fall in love with. Trigger warning, sewer slide. I'm gonna say that straight off. This is gonna be a bit of a long video as a result. I'm gonna try not to get very emotional because this scene always really kind of gets to me. So I actually just want to read it because I did post it on Facebook, but I know a lot of people aren't going to actually read this long of a post. So I'm gonna read it to you guys and see what you think. Sorry. I put one timid foot in front of the other, carefully inching my way out onto the creaking balcony, avoiding a gaping hole that was large enough to easily swallow me down to the porch a few stories below, until I could wrap my arm around her shoulders. I opened my mouth to speak again, but then I saw the look on her face and halted my jaw. Her eyes ever distant, her bridge was frozen perfectly level with her still blue lips. Her thoughts were someplace else. I pulled my arm away and leaned on the railing next to her, ants rushing out from within the cracks of the wood as it broke apart a bit under my weight. The insects somehow still alive in this frozen tundra that was the winter in southern Indiana. Sometimes I truly thought this town was hell. Much less was I concerned about the other side. I stood for minutes, watching the cars pass Raven Hill on their way out of town, exhaling all caution into the wind before I spoke my heavy inquiry. How did it happen? I asked, at last, the words almost squeaking out in a way that I had not experienced since I completed puberty. How did you die? There was a long moment of silence, and at first I did not think she was going to answer. She finally let out a deep breath that made my eternal exhale feel like a hiccup, and began her story, squeezing her shoulders ever tighter, like she was afraid her arms might somehow escape her body. It was late Thanksgiving night when I decided to sneak out of my house. I remember I put my car in neutral and just let it roll out of the driveway so that I didn't have to start it until I was on the street. I was texting Jenny as I drove, not really paying that much attention. It was the strangest conversation. I knew where I was headed, what I was about to do. But we were talking about a homework assignment we had gotten in Trig and how neither of us were going to do it. We claimed it was our patriotic duty, resisting homework on a national holiday. It was only fair. The concept of it as a protest made it feel like we were making a statement instead of being lazy. She asked how Billy was doing, and I didn't respond. She texted again, but I never bothered to take my phone out of the cup holder I had laid it in. I heard it vibrate once more when I hadn't responded for another 5 minutes, but I'll never know what those last words Jenny said to me. I drove until I got to the cliffs outside town, parking where all the kids from school go to make out during the summer, high above the raging Ohio. I got out of my car, and I remember looking back at my cell. I took a moment to consider calling my mother, but thought better of it. I've had friends who have been in this place before, and I'm aware that if anyone knew, or if even saying the words out loud, ran the risk of someone, or even yourself, stopping it. I shrugged off my coat and threw it in the car before wandering over to the guardrail and just watching the river below. It was a calm night high above the city, where the red blizzard raged below and you could see the full moon reflected brightly on the surface even through the clouds of the storm. The snow had stopped falling in the hours I stood there. The hours I stood there affirming my choice. At a point, I considered going back for my coat as I began to lose feeling in my extremities, but it was such a nice coat. My mother had bought it on sale when they first came out at Target late this summer. It was a surprise for me, even though it wasn't my birthday. A celebration of life, my mother called it. It was an expensive coat. I'd hate to take it where I was going. I remember watching the splash ripple out as a frog hit the water hundreds of yards below, and thinking that the fact that something that small could move every drop in that entire river, such a tiny thing, could make such a difference. No one else was out on the roads that night. I had watched as the plows had already been through and would not make another pass till morning. Only an idiot would take the road up to the cliffs when the temperatures dropped below freezing. I knew this was the only place in town that I could be truly alone. Then, like the coat, I remembered the sweater I was wearing. My mom and I had gotten it at the Black Friday sale last year. Got an awesome deal on it at some ungodly hour of the morning. It was a thick gray knit thing, and it was so warm. Oversized, because I mean my style. She paused and smiled, flashing a peace sign with one hand as though about to pose for an Instagram selfie. I could barely look at her at this point as she continued, feeling like we had hit a channel on the television with a rerun of an old show. I already knew how this story would end, and I couldn't believe she could tell it without one tiny bit of emotion. A newscaster reporting a story that had nothing to do with them. I slipped it off because it was too nice of a sweater to ruin. I folded it up carefully and laid it on top of the blanket of snow, right there on the edge of the cliff. A final marker, a cotton knit headstone reminding the world where I last stood, that I existed. As I slid my legs over the guardrail and sat upon it, I kicked off my boots after getting all the buckles undone, letting them drop all the way down to the river below. Each boot, even falling from so many hundreds of yards up, made no more or no less of a ripple than that frog that jumped from only a few feet away. My socks were sweaty from my boots, and I ripped them off quickly to prevent them from freezing. I sat there for a long time, just watching the moon. At last I willed up the courage, and I jumped. Well, not really jumped. It was more of a lean forward until gravity wins. It takes a long time to fall that far. Actually, that's probably not right. It was really only a second or two, but it sure felt like forever. It's quite a sensation, falling. I've never been skydiving, and I didn't really like carnival rides, so I really have nothing to compare it to, nothing that you'd understand unless you've ever fallen that far yourself. I know you never have, because, well, you're still alive. It felt like your mother's womb, the air enveloping around you, trying to force you to slow down while your weight is fighting for speed. You feel almost safe, like nothing can hurt you. All that changed when I hit the rocks. I felt my abdomen rip open when I caught on the jagged edge, felt the sharp pain tear through me like a paper cut. All wounds feel the same, at first, no matter how small or how deep the gash. It's only once you realize the severity of the injury that you feel different sorts of pain. I never had that realization. Not while I was alive, anyway. I don't think I died when I hit the water. No, I think I was still alive for a moment because I remember having in my head the choice of whether to breathe or not breathe when there was no air around me to fill my lungs. I remember having that choice, but I don't remember which I chose. All I know is my lungs made the decision with or without me, because I woke a moment later on a cold hardwood floor. Her face turned to mine and a half smile grew. With her glazed eyes, she looked stoned. I had to look away again immediately toward the moon, like it was the most important celestial body in existence. And the next thing I remember was seeing you. I stared off into the distance at that nearly full moon, unable to meet her dead eyes as they stayed burning into me, through me. I bit my lip, forcing back the admonishment that wished to come forth and instead merely stated the obvious like a foolish 2-year-old who wanted to have something to say after overhearing a grown-up conversation. You killed yourself? I did. Her eyes, her entire face wandered about, fighting to try to meet mine again. I could not allow it. That's why you wanted to leave so badly. What you meant when you said that some of you didn't expect anything after death. I really wanted to pose it as a question, but it came out as a statement, because I already knew the answer. That's why you fought to have me accept my role as the keeper. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be so selfish. I didn't understand you yet. I finally turned to meet her prying stare. So why now? Why don't you still want to go? I'm scared, Christian. I'm scared what awaits me might not be better than here. What I'm trying to escape. What I was trying to escape. This place is so much nicer. Why? Why did you do it? Her eyes returned to the traffic below. Now you're asking too much. I did not remove my gaze from her powder gray face, caked with smeared makeup, her perfect slits of eyebrows, and enough metal to require a strip search when going through the TSA. She was so very beautiful. Perhaps the most gorgeous woman I'd ever seen. And to think that she would choose to cut such a life short so soon. In case this novel never gets published, at least I know I shared what I think is one of the most beautiful scenes in it with all of you. Thanks for listening.